base PS5 will rise to $550.
$450 for a Series S.
Similar to many global businesses, we continue to navigate a challenging economic environment.
A price hike.
We are living in unprecedented times, and the future of consoles is in question. It's because of their price, frankly. 5 years after this generation began, the consoles have never been more expensive. And it's not a pattern we're used to. We're used to prices going down, to manufacturing improvements shrinking both the physical size of the machines and their price. But not this time. This time, it's different. Today in the USA, it costs $150 more to buy a base Xbox Series X than it did at launch, and $100 more for an Xbox Series S. Meanwhile in the UK, the 8th circle of hell, it currently costs £50 more for an Xbox Series X and £100 more for a Series S. And it's not just an Xbox thing. PlayStation has seen similar price increases across its range. And let's not forget Xbox President Sarah Bond's recent remarks re the next Xbox, and honestly I'm as surprised as you there's even going to be one, but here we go.
The next gen console is going to be a very premium, very high-end, curated experience.
My C-suite bullshit ease is a bit rusty, but I think that means expensive. But is this phenomena of increasingly unaffordable consoles just a blip? Could prices settle back down into a normal generational rhythm if the world calmed down a bit and inflation and tariffs and other mitigating factors eased? Then again, what if they don't? Could this become the norm forever? Could prices continue rising? And if so, who'd be able to afford one? And if fewer people can afford them, does it make sense to even keep producing them? Do the dominoes begin to teeter and topple until we're suddenly living in a world where no new console hardware is being produced? And is that it for AAA? Is that it for single player? Last of Us, God of War, Fable? Is that all dead? Cats and dogs living together, mass hysteria. Xbox's top brass are out there right now trying to normalise the concept of dropping $1,000 on an Xbox that isn't even a Xbox.
It feels like a device that's purpose-built.
That's not even an Xbox D-pad. Those aren't even Xbox face buttons. What is this, a Mad Catz ROG Ally? Get out of here, man. Look, I get it. Everything's an Xbox. I'm playing Outer Worlds 2 and Forza Horizon 5 right now on my PS5 Pro, which by this sort of weird new logic we're in, is now also an Xbox. Those are first-party Xbox games, and they even run better on the competitor's hardware, slightly, if you're dumb enough to get a Pro. And if you want my one-sentence review on that prospect, by the way, sincerely, don't bother. But the point is, that's insane. That's more insane than Sonic the Hedgehog being on Nintendo. That's like Dylan going electric, or America going, hey, how about a Fourth Reich? For the original article this video is based on, my colleague Bertie Purchase, who despite his name is a journalist and not a procurement manager for the craze, spoke to a few industry analysts and experts represented here by stock footage about this and asked them directly if the ballooning price of games consoles represented a death knell for the entire concept of games consoles, and was told, nah, probably not. Don't worry about it. For almost as long as I've been old enough to read games magazines, the death of the games console has been prophesied. Chris Dring, probably the most respected business-to-business games journalist in the industry, points out that PC gaming has been declared dead numerous times. Handheld gaming has been declared dead. Live service gaming was once touted to be the grim reaper for big-budget single-player games as a thing. And to go back to some more nonsense that Sarah Bond said recently,
exclusives have been less of a focus.
We're really seeing people evolve way past that.
Consumers haven't moved past the idea of exclusives. The continued runaway success of Nintendo, gaming's most solvent company, as ever directly contradicts a lot of the Nostradamusing that goes on in these parts. But what is true, what is undeniable, is that the business of making and selling consoles is fundamentally changing. Certain long-held assumptions no longer hold true. There's a big mix of platforms and storefronts that are the vehicles on which the gaming economy runs, and the role of consoles within that mess is shifting dramatically. But let's take a look at why this is happening, why prices are rising. There's been a lot of geopolitical instability in recent years. There are various conflicts, trade wars, actual wars that are driving up the price of making stuff and shipping it. The most prevalent example is the high import tariff US President Donald Trump is slapping on goods coming into his country, which means consoles or components for them manufactured outside of the US, as many are, have to absorb that extra cost. But it's not just a US thing. Everything is connected, and the general rise in inflation and the cost of living crisis is happening everywhere, including Canada, including the EU, including Japan. Microsoft, when announcing the 3rd of October price increases this year, cited changes in the macroeconomic environment as the reason for it. The macroeconomic environment, that's just all money. That's just everything. Similarly, Sony pointed to, quote, the backdrop of a challenging economic environment, including high inflation and fluctuating exchange rates, when it raised the European price of PlayStation consoles in May this year. Undeniably, global economic conditions play a significant part in this story. But there's also an element of choice here. Former Blizzard president Mike Ybarra made headlines recently when he said Microsoft was just using the Trump tariffs as an excuse to jack prices up, and the real reason is that profits just aren't as high as they should be. And that kind of ties into something we'll get into later. And let's be clear, we're not talking about prices being jacked up as some kind of last throw of the dice to make something profitable that currently isn't. Make no mistake, Xbox was and is making money hand over fist, just not enough to satisfy Cyril's sneer, or Microsoft's ChatGPT habit, which is basically doing the equivalent of getting rid of everything except a mattress on the floor in order to fund. Bloomberg reported just recently that since late 2023, it is alleged, Microsoft set a profit margin target of 30% across the entire business, which obviously includes the Xbox division, and the problem with that is that it's vanishingly unrealistic. That's almost twice the average profit margin of the entire gaming industry. Now, according to Bloomberg, before this target was set, the Xbox division was doing about 12.5%, which is about in line with the rest of the industry, and we're talking about a profit margin on a turnover of billions here. They laid thousands of people off in pursuit of making this number go up. They cancelled loads of stuff. They canned Perfect Dark. I mean, how much would it have cost to finish Perfect Dark 3? You know, sell some games, maybe shift a few of those Xboxes. Because, you know, when you sell games, you get money. Seriously, how much would it have cost to finish Perfect Dark? I mean, $100 million? That's like a rounding error for a company with a market value higher than the GDP of Italy. And just to be clear, right, Italy is a country and they make nice stuff there, like limoncello, balsamic vinegar, Ferraris, you know, quality stuff that you don't really need, but it's nice if you have the means. In the same way that I don't need a new Perfect Dark game, but it would have been nice. The point is that all of this is a choice. Just like governments pivoting to austerity, it's a choice. They don't have to do it. It arguably does more harm in the long run. But for immediate electoral prospects or fiduciary responsibility, number go up, no nuance, no context, just make the number go up. Now, in the past, they've made very different choices with more long-term thinking in mind. Choices like selling consoles at a loss to establish a market position that makes it viable to develop games for them. In other words, when Microsoft began this generation with an extremely aggressively priced £250 Series S and a £450 Series X, it was able to do it because it was sacrificing profit and a coherent naming scheme, but it was taking a hit to its bottom line to tempt people into buying an Xbox, because the more people who did, the more people it could sell games and subscriptions to. It is the basic equation on which the console business has run for decades, but because of, let's be honest, a track record of significant blunders and the perception that Xbox has no exclusives, Microsoft struggled to sell Xbox Series consoles this generation. In fact, we know that in some months of this year, Xbox has been posting its lowest sales figures in its entire history. They simply don't have enough boxes in the wild to make platform exclusives a viable concern anymore, and so they're doing the unthinkable by putting their games on Sony and Nintendo hardware, which, as a platform holder, it's basically waving a little white flag, but as a games publisher with a diverse portfolio, it's a no-brainer. Along with mid-gen price increases, it was another unprecedented move in a highly unpredictable era. All the experts we've spoken to agree that prices could well keep going up, and none of them would be pinned down on the question of whether prices will ever come back down again. It isn't all doom and gloom for the console business. There are reasons to be cheerful. Nintendo Switch 2 is one of them, since becoming the fastest selling dedicated games machine ever this year, selling 3.5 million consoles in just a few days.
Nintendo Switch 2 sales in July were so strong that July hardware spending reached $384 million, the highest July hardware spend since 2008.
And things like subscription services, microtransactions, ridiculously priced premium editions of games that come with a hat and a wee statue of a guy or whatever, mean games companies are actually making more money despite lower unit sales. But that doesn't change the simple fact that console sales generally are falling. Sales of this generation of Xboxes and PlayStations are lagging behind previous generations, and in the US, console sales are dangerously close to the lowest years we've had in recent memory. 2006 and 2013 have both been cited, and obviously unattractive price increases will only speed that rate of decline. Whether or not Switch 2's success will offset some of that is sort of beside the point, because the bigger, more worrying point is that consoles are a mature market. They're not a growing one. Like me, I mean, I'm growing horizontally, but anecdotally, the only people who care about having a box under your telly to play Uncharted on are sad old like me for the most part. I mean, this is just my personal experience, but I've got 3 teenagers, and honestly, they couldn't care less about Xbox and PlayStation as brands, because they've got laptops for schoolwork and mobile phones for cyberbullying, and all of those things can run Minecraft. And they're not casuals either. My eldest is obsessed with Undertale, for example, and they have Xboxes and PlayStations in the house. They're just not married to them. A PlayStation is just one of the many portals they have to things they actually care about. Which brings us back to the idea that the role of the console is shifting. Consoles used to be the entry-level gaming device, the affordable alternative to the premium experience of PC gaming, or ploughing loads of quids into an arcade machine, at a time when there weren't dozens of things in your house with OLED screens all begging for your attention. Now consoles are becoming premium devices in and of themselves, luxury machines for a shrinking number of hardcore enthusiasts who want more meaningful experiences from this hobby than what cell phone gaming offers. Cell phones, which by the way have long usurped them as the place where most people will experience their first video game. I don't know why I'm saying cell phone. I also don't know why I'm doing the Tony Blair thumb point thing. So the questions that Sony, Microsoft and Nintendo need to answer are: how are we going to respond to a world where all of our customers are in their 30s and 40s? How do we tempt people over from their iPhones? And what exactly is the point of us if the obvious upgrade path from a phone is to a PC? Devices like the Steam Deck offer some sort of answer, a personal device with tablet features that bridges the gap between console and PC, and it looks like Microsoft is taking that idea and running with it, starting with the ROG Ally X, where the Xbox part amounts to essentially an app running on a more general purpose device that can also run Steam and whatever else you want. The noises coming from Microsoft seem to imply that this is now the vision going forward. The next Xbox might not even be manufactured by Microsoft. It might just be a target spec, an operating system and a set of standards, like the 3DO was. Remember that? Both Xbox and PlayStation are kind of moving in that direction anyway. They're all just very customized IBM compatibles now. They have been since 2013. It's almost the same AMD silicon all these things are running on. The shift to more general purpose gaming devices with access to multiple storefronts is emotionally and experientially a massive shift, but practically, it's actually very subtle. The distinction between consoles and PCs is already so thin that it's mostly about vibes. And every time a layer of that distinction is peeled away, it leaves people like us, gamers, hobbyists, enthusiasts, wondering what on earth the point is. Because regardless of the marketing bluster, this is not an Xbox. I'm sorry, but my personal test for whether or not something is an Xbox is, can this run native Xbox games? Not, can it do so via a cloud service, or can it run the PC version and pretend? Can it do the things you expect a real Xbox to be able to do in 2025? Like, can it run Fable 2 locally and natively? No. And if the next Xbox is a £1,500 PC with an Xbox app pre-installed, that won't be an Xbox either. And maybe that doesn't matter to you, I'm not saying it should, but it does rather suggest that if everything is an Xbox, then nothing is an Xbox. And if that's the case, I'd rather buy a PlayStation, because for all of their faults, and they are numerous, at no point of the PlayStation brass ever tried to gaslight me about what one is.